The previous video we had to think in quite some detail about albedo. We talked about the dominance of non-reflective or absorbing surfaces. They're dark colour surfaces in urban areas that can absorb that solar radiation, causing temperatures sometimes quite often to be higher in urban areas, particularly during the night when that energy is re-radiated out of the buildings into the surrounding. So quite often we find that during the nighttime temperatures in urban areas are considerably warmer. So this video we're going to specifically look at radiation, solar radiation and sunshine. So if you live in a large city like Hong Kong that is highly urbanised, you will have come across this problem of at street level, because of the tall buildings, the street level is in constant shade, and we call those urban canyons. And we can see in this picture here, this is Hong Kong, and let's zoom in a little bit there. So you can see those urban canyons, those deep streets, effectively deep streets, very tall buildings either side, very narrow streets. So at street level, there are some things that you'll be potential things you'll be experiencing there. It will be in constant shade all of the time. Also, pollution, street level pollution generated by cars and other vehicles, that can get trapped in there. Depending on the exact location, it could be the air gets very stagnant because you don't get that natural airflow through the streets. So you're going to get higher temperatures there, and you're going to get higher levels of pollution because it's not blown away by the wind. The other thing we said, of course, is that it could be the opposite of that. The wind could be channeled up these urban canyons. So again, there is this complexity there. So all the things that I've just talked about, airflow, temperatures, they are well understood things which you can put them into a predictive computer model, so you can see what the problems are, and then from that you can suggest some solutions or some preventative measures. The other thing that we need to be aware of is that when we get high levels of pollution, you would have experienced this, the pollution itself can reduce the amount of sunshine getting down to us at street level and at ground level. We've given the example there of quite often when students go off on school trips to areas with lower levels of pollution, suddenly they find themselves heavily sunburnt. And that's because they don't effectively have the pollution in the air absorbing the solar radiation and protecting them from sunburn. It is something that I always warn my students about. Inevitably, being teenagers, some of those students would ignore that, and we have some quite unpleasant sunburn because of that. So what we find is, and you can watch this video here from FT, Hong Kong does struggle with pollution. So you've got those direct effects of the pollution being breathed in by people, but also if you have a hazy day, it can stop the sunshine getting down to street level, can have slightly lower temperatures, and then it's not a good environment if people are not exposed to sunshine. Sunshine, as long as you don't get sunburnt, is actually very good for your health. So that has big impacts on people's mental welfare. So in this video, we've looked at this idea of urban canyons. We dug down into a little bit of the complexity, how at a microclimate level it can affect things like wind circulation, it can affect things like albedo, it can affect things like the amount of sunshine that gets down to the street level. We've also starting to think about what the health, both physical and mental health implications there are for people that live in urban areas that all the time spend all their time in these urban canyons. And then we went on to think about the effect that pollution can have on temperatures because of the ability of pollution to absorb solar radiation and stop it getting down to street level. Please watch the video here from the website. That will give you a little bit more detail. So the next video we're going to look at the phenomenon of smog. Smog, compound word like hangry, cloud and fog. Put those words together and you'll get smog. Something specifically we will look at, and we will look at the science of smog and all those nasty chemicals in the smog that are directly produced by the industrial activities, but also the processing that goes on in the atmosphere when those pollutants come into contact with solar radiation.